Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's webinar entitled 10 Tips for Sharing News and Social Content in an Online Newsroom. Today's conversation is brought to you by Business Wire and powered by Onstream Media. To submit a question or comment at any time during the webinar, please click on the Ask a Question button on the bottom of your screen. Simply type your message into the box and click on the Submit button. Alternatively, you can submit your questions via Twitter using the hashtag BWChat. All questions will be answered at the end of today's presentation. Also, a copy of today's presentation will be available for your download. Please click on the Materials tab at the bottom of your screen to receive your copy. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to today's host, Ibrey Woodall, Vice President of Web Communication Services at Business Wire. Ibrey, the floor is now yours.
Well, thank you, Ms. Erica. Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Happy hump day, as they say. Thanks so much for joining me. Hopefully you'll be able to get something out of this particular presentation concerning 10 tips for sharing news and social content in an online newsroom. Now, I don't think we're going to take the full hour because we're not really focusing on the entire online newsroom. That would take an hour. We're really just going to focus on the sharing news and social content aspect of it. I want to thank commpro.biz and Onstream Media for making this webinar happen. And as Erica stated, if you want to tweet, you've got hashtag BWChat to use, please. Also, I'm going to have my contact information at the end, along with QAs at the end. But please go ahead and type those questions in there during the webinar, and I'll get to them at the end. So what you're seeing now, just to let you guys know why I can actually speak to this particular subject matter, is I have been around since the beginning of online newsroom software, which means I am old and battered and bruised with dealing with a lot of these Fortune 500 companies and helping them with their online newsrooms. If some of you don't know the origin of the online newsroom software, was really started because public relations people just could not get any help from their tech team. You know, they just didn't understand the word deadline. They had to promise their firstborn child just to get a press release posted, things like that. So that is, in essence, the catalyst, if you will, to the creation of content management software that builds and manages an online newsroom. So let's make sure that before we start talking about the social aspect of it, let's talk about what an online newsroom is. A lot of people misunderstand that, you know, this is a news site, an overall general news site. It is not. It is, in essence, a centralized communications center for an organization or corporation that is usually run by corporate communications or marketing. It's a headquarters specifically for the organization's content, all content, in my personal opinion. You got news, you got even published brand articles and all these press materials. And any kind of content that you're wanting to push out to the world or conversation, in essence, an online newsroom falls under what is known as owned media, where it is controlled by the organization, and there's obviously paid and earned, which earned is editorial coverage and paid is advertising. Usually, in the beginning, the online newsroom, the target audience was strictly the media. That has evolved over the years, even though the media still remain the core target audience. Nowadays, it's everyone. It's consumers. It's bloggers. Recently, we're seeing one of the fastest-growing target audiences for online newsrooms being internal employees, which has been kind of fun to watch. So it is usually a separate microsite from the corporate or main site, and you can identify a company's online newsroom usually by a CNAME or what we know as a subdomain, such as news dot, whatever the company this domain is, or newsroom dot, or media dot, or press dot. Dish went with about dot. So that's usually how people recognize this being your centralized content management area for just your corporate communications. Now, what you'll see here is a corporate site, or www.kbhome.com. The key is that you have that main navigation to the newsroom, okay? Make sure that you fight to have your news button or your media button or your press button. I don't care what you call it. I usually go with news because it's general enough to encompass all kinds of news or content that you're getting out there. But the key is to make sure that you do have it in your top main navigation. It can be a fight sometimes. Try not to have it hidden underneath the About button, because you really want this to be first and foremost, okay? That's actually very, very important. People don't understand that. So what we're also going to go through on some of the things when we talk about sharing content, I'd like you to know that there is an annual Business Wire Media Survey where we get an idea of what journalists need and want in the online newsroom. Just want to let you know that the online newsroom is indeed in the top 3 locations where people go to learn about your company. Obviously, a search engine, that's the first thing we all do. We're all lazy. We just go google.com, or they go directly to the corporate site or the main site, and that's where they see the news button, which obviously then takes them to the online newsroom. So you need to make sure that all of the content that you're going to be posting and sharing out is kept up to date. It is not a situation where, build it and they will come. I think that was a Kevin Costner movie, wasn't it? So the key here is to make sure that the online newsroom is updated frequently. Make sure you have the right content in it that you're going to be sharing out, and make sure it's visible from the home page, and make sure that you have followed all the best practices from a search engine optimization perspective so that your newsroom can be easily found, shall we say. And, of course, like Erica stated in the early, there is either you can download the media survey from your materials screen here, or you can go to that particular URL, no big deal. You'll find a lot of good information in there, not just from an online newsroom perspective, but also from the current media landscape, wire distribution, some good tips and points. So, also, there is a white paper that is available to you strictly about the 10 tips for sharing news and social content in an online newsroom, in case you want to have a nice little fun checkoff list. Okay, so let's take a look at our agenda today. The top 10, first one's going to be the fact that we're going to post links to social networks. Then we're going to feature and share content. Then we're going to incorporate feeds, and I'll talk about the different kinds. And then, of course, we're going to make sure that people can share your content as well, your site visitors, as well as the fact that we need to make sure that you are reducing your workload when you're doing the sharing. And as I mentioned, we will have some Q&A at the end, so pop those suckers in there, and I will get to them as we wind down, shall we say. So let's look at number 1. Number 1, very, very simple. Make sure you post your icons and your links to these social networks. Now, quite frankly, even as simple as that sounds, people forget to do it. And it's extremely frustrating. I've gone to a lot of sites and said, well, I want to see if they have a Twitter account. And there's nothing on there. So then I have to go search for it, find it. It's just very frustrating. So, I don't care if you're putting it into your footer like Sling TV does, or in your right rail, or in your drop-down like Dish does, or like Krispy Kreme puts it in their right rail underneath all their media contacts. Just make sure it's there. Don't forget it. I think it's cool how Hooters actually puts in an icon to their newsroom as well, to the right side of their YouTube icon. I think that was super smart. The other thing I like to recommend is that when these link out to your social networks, make sure that that link opens up a secondary browser because you don't want them leaving your online newsroom. You want them to be able to get to it, but you want them also to have, your online newsroom stay there in its own browser so they can still cruise through it and gather and pick up information. So simple, but quite frankly not done by everyone. Number 2, this is where you really need to think about featuring the content that you should be sharing. What I mean by that is you should highlight certain content on the homepage of your online newsroom, and then you should share that out. Now, you'll see a lot of things here. You can see Synchrony Financial. They've got a beautiful rotating carousel, automatic rotating carousel, where they have, either the buttons on the left or the bottom. You can see where it rotates between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tide has 4 that rotates. Staples, they're very serious. They just want you to see this one release, this one featured release. Now, the key here is that you're persuading these people to see this content. They can't miss it. It's the first thing they see. And when you're sharing out or tweeting out, you're also coming back to your newsroom and generating that traffic back to it. A couple of things that people don't realize with what is known as these rotating carousels that we have. It doesn't have to be the 4 or 5 most recent pieces of content. You can actually have an older piece of content stay in your featured mode, if you will, because maybe you still want people to see that. So it's all about you managing your content and persuading it and sharing what it is that you want them to know about. I have seen some recent conversations about sometimes the carousel getting in the way of some mobile sites, but I'm still looking into that. It's still early on. So far it's still working, but I'll keep you guys posted on that. And if you have any questions about what kind of content, what types of content you should be sharing from your newsroom, you should have all of this information in your online newsroom, and you should be sharing it out there. As you can see here by these percentages from the media survey, you can see the most important ones to media themselves. Obviously, the naysayers have lost the battle when it comes to the importance of press releases. They are still the most important type of content available within a newsroom that should be shared out. Contact information, you got to think about that. It's a big deal. And then, you might see down near the end blogs and brand articles, but again, remember, this particular survey was media. I think that some of your other target audiences from your newsroom are going to be interested in your published brand articles and in your blog posts. So you definitely need to make sure that they're available within your online newsroom and that you are pushing that content out. A couple of things to think about also when you are featuring and sharing your press releases or your news releases from your online newsroom. Think about the fact that you should be categorizing your news releases, your news, by subject matter. So it's easier for people to be able to see what they may be interested in. You can, share out a tweet about, this is Owens Corning's, their financial releases, in case that's all they're interested in. But it's very important to do that instead of just kind of having them all there in a row. I mean, you still have that, if you will, your list view of that, but you need to make sure that they can get to it quickly. And also, what we've learned over many years is that the minimum amount of press releases that you should have within your online newsroom is at least 2 to 5 years. Now, you're going to have a lot of people who are looking for your entire historical archive of press releases. So depending upon your content strategy and what you want to be there, depending upon your company, what you have to share, then you might want to consider having your entire historical archive, or what we recommend sometimes is just have what we call milestone releases in your listing there, maybe just something that affected the company, such as a merger or a new CEO, but you may not necessarily need the press release from 1977 about an event or something like that. So, also, some people are still keeping their press releases in a PDF format only. That's a major faux pas. Please do not do that. You really should have your content in HTML text. Now, there are occasions where you might want to add a complementary PDF. I'm seeing this in the investor relations financial content arena, where you'll have one of those earnings releases that has a ton of tables, financial tables in it, that if printed from a newsroom can break in the middle of a table. So maybe you want to add a PDF where it's been styled and it doesn't necessarily break. So the concept here is you create it accurately, you post it, and then you share it. But you need to make sure that it's kind of shared automatically. Other information, contact information, you need to make sure that, if you are adding new contact, you make sure that you share that out to the media that follow you. Quickest way to piss off a journalist, anyway, is to make them search for your contact information. I mean, they want it all. They want your cell phones. Whether or not you provide that, that's totally up to you. But they are going to want this information. I did have a journalist one time tell me that they wanted the CEO's cell phone. I'm like, well, that's not going to happen, so just get over that. Images, got to have your images. Let's say you put up a new picture of a brand-new CEO. I mean, don't just leave it in your multimedia gallery. Make sure that you share that out in many ways. You want to share out the fact that maybe you've got a brand-new product or service. You want to make sure that's posted in your multimedia gallery. And again, if you are lucky enough to have a lot of imagery that you can share out, make sure that you also categorize that as well. So things to think about, as well as video, logos, things like that. So fact sheets also are something that you need to make sure that you keep updated and that you send out anytime you update a fact sheet, maybe annually or whatever, you want to make sure that you send that out. Journalists love these little bulleted lists, as I call them. This is one area where I do recommend that you have your facts and bullet points on your online newsroom in text, HTML text, but you also add a PDF so that if they've come in from a social network, they can actually just grab it and go, download it. Press kits also, very important. Press kit, you're going to have a compilation around something, let's say maybe around a product. Let's say maybe you have shared out the fact, hey, everything you want to know about the Apple Watch, click here. Then that's going to work. That's going to be a whole press kit on it. I personally have a Garmin Connect. I don't have an Apple Watch. But I did go to the Garmin Newsroom to research it. So pretty important things to have, and this is the content they want you to push out to them. Executive bios, super, super, super important. If you go through these mergers and acquisitions that are happening, or if you're going through a new CEO, that's hot news. You got to have this information there. You got to have those bios there. You got to have those bios linked to videos about those particular executives. Get that traffic going in between the pages of your newsroom. And anytime you have that brand new video of that journalist, I mean, maybe you want to share out just to go directly to the bio itself, not necessarily directly to the video. That way they can still get to the video, but you've created more traffic and pages. Again, it's all about your content strategy. This is marketing your content out there. Depending upon how you want to share it, you might want to share it on all networks, or maybe you actually know your target audience and where they reside, and you want to use that one. One of the things I think would be good, especially from a brand evangelist perspective, is your your history, the history of the company, the timeline. Here's our new article about, Colonel Sanders from KFC. That's going to actually get some traffic if you put that out there. Don't just build it and leave it. Put it out there. Another thing to think about, locations, facilities. It's really very, very difficult to find addresses. I don't think you should hide this. I think that anytime you add a new satellite office or a new store or restaurant, you need to put this out there. This shows growth, and use this as news, quite frankly. Also, a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with journalists, they want quotes from experts. And, some of your internal executives are going to be your experts. That's fine, but maybe sometimes you have external executive or experts, like maybe if you are a company with a lot of restaurants and then you have some experts that are chefs that don't necessarily work for the company, but yet they have a lot of these white papers, and anytime they write a radical new white paper, you want to post it, make it available on your online newsroom, and then the minute that you post it, you want to push it out there so that you draw people to download it. Also, some other content to think about. If you're lucky enough to get some positive coverage, editorial coverage out there in the world, then tweet about it to the high heavens. Make sure people know that you're getting some positive coverage, that you're a valid company, that people love you very much so. And then think about events. Especially on Facebook, you'll see a lot of the posts around Facebook surrounding events and who's actually interested in going, who's actually signed up to go, especially if it's a fun, cool event. To think about, one of the ones I always think about is the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. Can you imagine the first PR person who thought about that, who's just sitting there saying, hey, let's have a hot dog eating contest? And now it's a major event. And then you want to think about, you want to share it prior to the event to get people to go, and then you also want to share it after the event, linking back to pictures from the event. So, again, it's a vicious cycle, but it is a vicious cycle that works. You also want, again, as I mentioned, the blogs, the brand articles. A lot of people are starting, a lot of public relations people are starting to write and publish their own stories, if you will, about the company. I think this is a good thing to do, but I think that you have to be very, very careful in your planning around this. I think you need to be very serious about it. If you're going to do it, you need to have an editorial calendar. You need to do it on a frequent basis, and you need to share it on a frequent basis if you're going to do it. Don't do it haphazardly, shall we say. Also with blog posts, some people say, well, what's the difference between brand articles and blog posts? That depends on your content strategy. Procter & Gamble is using their blog posts. As you can see, Dish has actually two totally separate kinds of blog posts. So depending upon what your content strategy is and what you have enough content for, you can make sure that this is available in your online newsroom, and then you can share it out. All right, so we've talked about putting up social icons, and we've also talked about featuring content. Let's talk about number 3. This is where you're going to incorporate your feeds from your social networks so that they automatically appear in your online newsroom, okay? Concept behind this is that anybody who's visiting your online newsroom will indeed know that you are participating in these social networks. And they'll be able to see some of the content to entice them then to go to those networks. But you don't want them leaving, so you want them here that they can see your most recent activity. As you can see on the Office Depot newsroom, they have tweets showing on their homepage of their newsroom from both Office Depot and Office Max. Usually you'll have one social media main navigation within your newsroom, and when people go to that page, you'll see a variety of social networks being pulled in. Food Line has this. The YouTube videos. With YouTube, it's usually the most popular YouTube videos that are showing up. As you can see here, Adobe participates on Twitter and Instagram, and all is accessible from news.adobe.com. in Procter & Gamble, Facebook, and Twitter. Some people are pulling in LinkedIn. Again, all depends on what your content strategy is around, but you want to see that those tweets are going out there. And also what's nice is that, somebody's visiting, they can see the latest tweet, about the latest press release, and then know that that's where they're going to go to get more information and more complementary material that go along with that particular press release, such as videos and so forth. So, number 4, let's take a look at incorporating feeds from other content hubs. This one really is going to depend on a very sound content strategy, because you really should be very careful when you're thinking about pulling in other content. Sometimes you may have a situation where you have multiple blogs that have already been established for a while, so you don't really necessarily want to move them to your online newsroom. You want to keep them where they are, but you do want them to pull in at least the headlines from those blogs. Like with Adobe, they have multiple blogs. They only pull in the conversations blog, as they say. Echelon, as you can see, pulls in blog posts and puts it right next to there in the news. Or if you have some good content that, again, is managed elsewhere, or you have other political reasons why that content is not necessarily residing in the newsroom, but yet it makes sense to pull in that content, then you should do that. One thing I do warn against is be very careful when you're considering pulling in a general industry type of feed. I tend not to advise doing that because you don't really have control over that content. It's not owned. You could easily have content appear in your feed on your online newsroom that could be a negative article about your company or a positive article about your direct competitor. So a lot of people think that that's a good thing to do. It is not, okay? All right, so make sure that all of the content within your online newsroom can be shared by others. You want to get that opportunity out there to get more reach, if you will, so that if I happen to be on Keurig's online newsroom and I absolutely love their product, I'm going to click on that little button and I'm going to tweet it out. This is going to be shared off of my Twitter account or my Facebook account. That's fantastic for those of you who rely on brand loyalists. The key is that make sure that you go beyond just the top 3, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Make sure that you're still providing somebody who's using a lesser-known type of social network that they can actually put that out there for you as well. And then this is more of a combination of a back-end administration functionality and automation and front-end content. So in essence, since you, as a PR person, are responsible for way too many things, quite frankly, as most of them are that I talk to, it's just too much work sometimes. You got to create the new content, you got to post the content, then you got to go to each individual and show social network and post it. I mean, your day's gone. So try to make it where your online newsroom is automated in the sense so that when you're posting content, you can push a few buttons or pop in a few articles, and then at the same time as you're posting it to your newsroom, you want to spit out a tweet or spit out something onto your LinkedIn account. It's like boom, 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 boom. This is going to make your life so much easier. So if you aren't doing that and you are doing all the other hassles, you might want to consider that because it will make your life easier. And here's a situation where NewScale Power had a great event. They popped out a press release. They popped out multimedia concerning the event. They popped in some materials, white papers that the senator, I think, wrote about the event. So, again, as you can see, you're kind of providing all of this content as a full story, if you will, and then you're sending it out there, and then, of course, pulling them back in. Also, you want to consider allowing your content to be accessible in various ways because you're dealing with various target audiences. They all have various personalities and ways in which they like to get their content. Make sure that your content within your online newsroom is accessible via RSS feeds. And, of course, make sure that those RSS feeds match up with your categories, however you decide to categorize your content. A good example that I like to use that I've seen in action for kind of supporting RSS feeds is, let's say I'm a journalist and I cover a variety of companies because I cover the automotive industry. So instead of every day going to Toyota's site, Ford's site, Volkswagen's site, all that takes time, I'm just going to use my RSS reader to subscribe to all of these individual online newsrooms so that I can just look at my RSS reader and know when new content is posted to each of those individual newsrooms. Huge time saver. A huge way for you to make sure that your content is shared out to people that you need to see it, that you need to see it, that you need them to see it, whatever that works. All right, now, number 8, integrating your news articles. Now, I personally believe this is extremely important, but it's not always that easy to do. Now, what I mean by this is that you should fight, as a PR person, you should battle the internal battle of gaining some real estate on the corporate site to pull in the 3 most recent pieces of content that you want to highlight onto the corporate site. Big deal. What it does is it increases the traffic to your online newsroom, just like having that news button does as a high-level navigation. It also keeps the corporate site updated and says, hey, this is our news. This is important stuff. Here it is right on our corporate homepage. So pretty important. It will, like I said, really increase the traffic to your newsroom, get your news out there. In my opinion, again, it is a necessity. But it is a battle. Somebody who really gets it is Procter & Gamble. Not only do they pull in their press releases from news.pg.com onto us.pg.com, their main site, they also pull in social media and blog posts and things like that. So they understand the importance of having that content easily accessible onto their corporate site. I also like how Paytm, I think it is, Paytm, what they do is they pull in these articles from their releases, and they're using them in their design of their corporate site. It's not just a list there. I mean, there's a list obviously within the newsroom because that's how you want journalists to be able to access it. But on the corporate side, they're pulling this stuff in, and they're really integrating it into the overall design. Smart, very smart. Okay, that was number 8. Let's talk about number 9, offering automatic email alerts. This is a way for you to share out your content to those people who you know for a fact they do want to receive your content because they've registered to do so. So in essence, once they register, anytime that what they'll do is they'll select, at least you should make it where they select what kind of news they want to receive from you, what kind of content they want to receive from you. Trust me, they don't want everything from you. They don't want to hear everything you have to share. They're very specific about what they want to have shared with them. So they'll be able to select that. And then the moment that you're popping new content out there into the lovely wild world, then you post it to your newsroom, it's going to automatically generate out an email alert to that target audience. And here you can see where ServiceMaster has a new event that was sent out automatically. Siemens has a new blog post that was automatically posted and automatically generated. So, again, automation for you, the PR person, to save your 25 hours in a day that you've been able to squeeze out, and also to make sure that these people are getting what it is that they want shared with them. Another way to look at this, last but not least, of course, is number 10. Now, this is more of a manual situation, non-automatic, as they say. It's more of a planned sharing. So it's kind of more of a one-off type of email that you're going to create, and you're going to promote a specific piece of content. Ryan here got a good article written about them in Barron's. So they're drawing attention, or they're bringing your attention to this particular article. It generates a lot of traffic. And what's nice is if you do have a specific database and you have that database categorized, like maybe you just want to send it just to business analysts or business editors, then you can do that. So, again, it's all about having an overall plan and going through the tactics and steps to implement that plan. Now, I would, even though that's number 10, I would definitely be remiss in not talking about the importance of having a mobile newsroom, making sure that mobile newsroom is, in essence, what is known as adaptive responsive mobile, which is the newer technology today, which will have your newsroom adapt or respond to the size of the mobile device that is accessing it, smartphone or tablet. The key here that I try to emphasize is if they can't access it from their mobile device, they're not going to share your content. It's pretty simple, pretty easy, pretty simple. So, but a lot of people wait to do that, or they don't pay attention to it. You can no longer ignore mobile. The stats are too important. And also, since you are the one sharing this content out, putting this content in your newsroom, keeping it out there, then you need to make sure that you know what in the world's working. You need to see these analytics about your online newsroom to see which pieces of content are actually being looked at the most. Know what's important, know what's not important. I was recently in Denver doing a seminar for the Public Relations Society of America, their Colorado chapter, and my client Dish joined me. And we went through and we took a look and we saw that their top 7 most accessed areas within their newsroom, and leadership's right up there. But number 4, their blog's pretty important. You need to know what your list is. You need to also know how many visits or views you get to your online newsroom. If you don't know, go ask your tech team. And then you need to make sure that you check that every year to see if it's growing or not, because your whole content strategy and sharing of your content, you want to make sure that you're increasing those visits. So, like I said, it's a vicious cycle, but it does work. So that should pretty much give you a good idea. I told you we weren't going to take too long today, but to kind of show you a review of what we just went over, you also can download these slides from your materials tab as well. But I'm going to kind of go on and move on to Q&A, as well as the fact where you have links to those downloads as well. If your materials tabs isn't working and you have access to me, if you'd like to contact me, feel free to do so. I like to chat to people. So let's take a look at the Q&A. Let's see here. I'm trying to move this. Okay, here we go. Got a lot going on. All right, I like this one. This is a good one. Is your recommendation to have a separate news site rather than having it being a section of the main corporate site? It would seem that having the newsroom be part of the main corporate site would have several advantages. Actually, and that's kind of a common thought process, but it's really what we have found in reality on that is that it's better to have it separate, usually because for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's just a political decision because the PR person needs their own tool and the tech people are just not giving them their information. I have done a lot of research on the SEO aspect of that. It doesn't really hurt to have it as a subdomain. And also I've seen situations in the past, especially I think it was Delta's many, many years ago, when they had an issue and their corporate site went down. Delta went down, but yet their newsroom stayed live. So it is good to have it separate. But the key is that you make sure that the newsroom has the same look and feel, the same navigation back and forth, so that it feels like it's part of the main site. I've had situations where I've had a rogue PR person say, well, I want to do a totally different design. I don't like the design of my corporate site. No, sorry. It's all about branding and making it part of it. So hopefully that answered that question for you. Any companies with modern newsrooms that you'd recommend? Oh, my gosh, there's so many of them. News.pg.com, news.adobe.com, newsroom.bankofamerica.com, hotnews.krispykreme.com. I got tons. So they're out there. You can always email me, too, if you want more. Please provide some suggestions regarding which social media outlets are best for different industries. Now, that's a great question, and I do not have the research to give you some specifics on that. And I do believe that as a content marketer, that's part of your job to know what is specific to your specific industry. You should roll up your sleeves and do the work on to find that out, just like any advertiser, any person who's responsible for advertising their particular industry knows exactly where their target audiences is and that's where they're going to buy media. Then it's the same situation. So, again, LinkedIn obviously is professional. Facebook is more general, friendly. I see a lot of events there. I see that's very successful there. It's going to be specific to you. I personally believe that everybody should be using Twitter account because their Twitter account to tweet out their information. It's another distribution model. So the more you use, the better. So let's take a look at another one. Maybe this is the ex-journalist in me talking, but for the content to look so branded seems to be problematic. Should the company name be all over it if you want the press to see it as reason subjective information, ideas, and commentary? Interesting. I mean, don't get carried away in your design where it's all over it, but yeah, you want this to be branded because you as a journalist, if you're covering that particular company, you want to know that this is the official online newsroom for this particular company. Because, I mean, if you think about it, years ago with BP had all that oil spillage, and there were all these fake sites that popped up, all these fake newsrooms that popped up, giving them a hard time. So, yeah, I think it should be branded, quite frankly. Now, you also can have different areas within the newsroom, like maybe your stories and articles that would be, or commentaries, but that's where you have verbiage explaining what that particular section or that particular type of content is all about. Press releases are different than blog posts, things like that. So hopefully that answered that question. Do I have any more come in? Let's take a look. Let's see. Bear with me while I handle this. A lot of people sometimes ask me, all right, should I have a separate Twitter account just for my communications department or my investor relations department? That, again, is also something internal. I've seen both. I've seen, and it usually ends up being a political situation where someone can't have access to the Twitter account, but yet they want to send out a tweet about their press release. So if that's the case and you're not getting cooperation internally, then, yeah, have your own news Twitter account or your own IR Twitter account, because maybe in your IR Twitter account, your investor relations news, you just want it to be financial news. Again, it's all certain situations. A lot of people are asking me, nowadays, especially when people are starting to write and do their own brand articles, what kind of articles should I have in the newsroom? Well, usually from the surveys we found, industry trends is usually one of the most desired types of articles that people want to see within the newsroom. Customer-related ones, which always make a great story. Events, executive-related, especially if they're being bad executives, as we've seen so much of lately. That's always a good one. And then let's see if I have any more. How does SEO and sharing relate to one another? Well, sharing is getting your content out there. Now, and again, your online newsroom, if it's not optimized for search engines to see it, then it's going to be difficult for people to go there and see your wonderful information and share it out for you as well and use them. So it's pretty important. And they do tend to, some of the best practices for each of these areas, if you will, tend to overlap a little bit. So I think I have pretty much answered all of the questions that I can see here. So if you do have more questions or something pops in your head a little bit later, you've got my email address there. Do let me know. If you have other questions, you need my help, let me know. All right? So hopefully I didn't take too much of your time. And appreciate your time, and I also appreciate commpro.biz and Onstream Media for making this happen. Thanks so much, guys. Happy Hump Day. Have a great holiday next week. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude today's webinar. We'd like to thank you for your participation, and you may close out your browsers at this time. Have a great day.